Hey up everybody, it's Johnny P, the Painting Coach, and this week's Now Then message. So I'm going to keep with the theme of the universal laws. And universal law 2 I'd like to introduce you to is the law of accumulated neglect. And again, this is an unseen force that's about us. It's like the law of electricity, like the law of gravity. These laws are in play and they affect us more than we know. And what this law is saying is we've got to be careful about the things that we neglect because they accumulate over time to an end consequence. Now, the subtlety of this law is they're not immediate. So let's just take an example of, okay, so if I eat a big breakfast once, there's no immediate consequence to that one action. And maybe twice a week, and maybe 3 times a week. But if I keep on eating, and say, unhealthy breakfast over a number of years, that neglect of me not looking after myself and starting the day right is going to accumulate into an end consequence. But because there's no immediate effect, we start to say to ourselves, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But we've got to start thinking about, if this law's in play, where will this neglect take me in the next 5 or 10 years? So, it could be around eating. It could be around your own personal development. It could be around spending time with your family or friends. There's always going to be an accumulation of neglect. And we've got to start thinking about how do we diminish this neglect? So this neglect, you might stay in bed till late. You might not do enough exercise. These little, small, subtle neglects start to build. And what I start to think is like a ratio appears. If we do anything over time and enough of it, a ratio will appear. So we've got to start thinking about how this law applies to you. What are you neglecting? And this is a truthful look at yourself. It's not about making excuses or justifying, oh, well, it's this, or we're facing hard times, we've got this adversity that we're facing, so it's all right to stay in bed a little bit later. It's all right to eat more takeaways than I normally do. Because this neglect starts to erode our self. And what I always talk about is not just, self-esteem, but self-discipline, self-belief, because it has an effect, and especially on our energy if we're doing bad things that are not good for us. So I've always talked about disciplines and misjudgments, and that's what it just sort of comes down to. Throughout the day, we either make misjudgments or we apply some disciplines, we practice disciplines. And each one of them will accumulate into something. So I'd like you to consider, what are the things that you're neglecting? And what have they accumulated to right now? But also future thinking about what could they accumulate to in the next 5 years if you carried on. Because they will have an effect. You can't think that actually by doing something, even though it's small, isn't going to hurt you, but over time it will hurt you because it's going to accumulate into something bigger. And then the consequence may be something where you can't turn away from it. So please ask yourself that personal question is, what are the things that I'm neglecting? Family time, my health, my fitness, my personal development, so many different things. Is that acceptable? And if I carry on, where will it get me in the next 5 years, 10 years? And then don't bring in denial, because common sense has to prevail to say, well, actually, if I carry on doing what I'm doing, there is a very good chance that this could happen. Yes, it might not, and you can convince yourself out of it, but actually, if I carry on neglecting these certain areas in my life, it may have a consequence. So my challenge to you is, how do you diminish the neglect? And how can you start to apply some small disciplines that will stop this accumulation of neglect. Because watch out for that ratio, because it's not immediate. So I hope this helps. This is law number 2, universal laws. The law of accumulated neglect. And it's in play all the time, never stops. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's actually happening, but it will have an effect over time. So like at the moment, I know we're facing quite a lot of adversity and a lot of it is out of our control. And I'm getting the understanding now that we've got to start thinking about how can I respond to this adversity, even though it's out of my control. And I think this is where you have to look to yourself and you sort of take ownership of it. I've talked many a time about having get-to-it plans in place, having some kind of structure on your day, taking that responsibility to those actions, looking after yourself, looking after other people. It's out there. It is, like I said, a formidable foe that we are facing, and unfortunately we can't really control it as much as we'd like to. But what we can control is our decisions and our choices. So my end message really, at the end of this now then message, is what is it that you can respond to, that you have absolute freedom of choice over? Because that's what it comes down to, your control over you. What is it? What are the principles do you follow that can give you that choice? So that's the end of this week's Now Then message. Thank you for your time, your energy and your focus. Good luck with everything, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you so much. Bye for now.